Good morning and welcome back to the Up Zone, where understanding politics is made simple. We are your two hosts, Mr. Elmer Floyd, former House Representative for the 43rd District in the state of North Carolina, and myself, Tisha S. Waddell, former City Council member for the 3rd District in the city of Fayetteville, North Carolina. Mr. Floyd, how goes all?
Well, I got through Christmas. I'm sure y'all have another holiday for us to celebrate. So, we're really helping the state of North Carolina as it relates to its revenue collection.
All that sales tax, right?
Got all that sales tax, and then again, April the 15th, you all gonna get us again. With our income tax, we just contributed to the county well-being, and I don't know, Tisha. I'm just waiting for the next. We just surviving just to be stronger supporters of the economy.
If we so choose.
Well, you
We
know,
so
we
choose.
we don't have any choice to. I mean, I go and get some gas. I'm paying about 31 cents a gallon, for that. I called the man to fix this. I
You
got to
only
pay
pay you only paying you only paying 31 cents a gallon for your gas?
state taxes,
Oh.
gasoline tax,
I was about to
gasoline
say
tax.
where are you buying gas?
Gasoline. No, gasoline tax. Everywhere I
Okay.
turn around, there is some taxes. You know, I try to do good and go on the internet and back. There's taxes on that. So
Everywhere.
other than that, that's called taxation. We live in a taxation community. That's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Floyd, what announcements do you have for our audience today?
Well, as you know, the third Monday is Martin Luther King uh, prayer brunch, and that's
Hmm.
going to be at the Crown at 10 o'clock. And we also, and Charles Evans is having his fundraiser at the this coming Saturday at the I think it's the Veterans at the whatever that is, the Veteran at the fairground, the old fairground, and that's $35 a person. And I received communication yesterday evening that the Martin Luther King march will not take place this year. Now I
Thanks to
repeat
one
now,
of our viewers. One of our
march.
viewers notified us, yeah, of what was going to be happening. So thank you for keeping us informed, and we were able to verify that that was accurate. And Mr. Floyd, it seems like it might have caught a few people on the committee off guard.
Well, well, I spoke with the chair of the committee now. If I may teach, let me say to the community so they can get a better understanding. There's a board of directors, and if you look at the board of directors and you look at the city council, look at them as the city council member.
Hmm.
Then you have the committee, which is like the city manager. They handle the program component of the board of directors. There is very, 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 very little communication between the board of directors and the committee. I think we had a meeting sometime last year, and the chairman of the county board of commission was there, and he heard the cry of the members of the committee that they had no information in order to move forward they had no information in order to move. So
Hmm.
having said that, I expressed to the board at that time that the committee itself had 26,000. And when the chairman told us at one of our meetings that money was moved from Truett Bank, I'm sorry, from Lumley Bank to Truett Bank, there was $26,000 interest made on that money that was deposited there. So we assumed that that was the state money.
Hmm.
Today, the committee does not have access to that $26,000 that remain in Lumley Bank. They don't know about the $26,000 in interest. The article that was in the Fayetteville Press, which indicated they spent somewhere in the $300,000 on dispatches, on the Sparrow, so forth. The committee knows nothing, haven't seen
Hmm.
nothing, can't get access to the post office box to to receive money or to know what type communication. The chair was asked to collect, to go back a banquet that the committee had, and
Mm-hmm.
ask some members about the unpaid whatever. So one
Mm-hmm.
member sent in a check for $300,000. I mean, I'm sorry, for $300 in September. They
Mm-hmm.
just got a letter back saying that they could no longer collect money at this time. And so the committee members love what they're doing, Chief, but they have absolutely no say so as it relates to going forward. So there's two board members that has the information. The next person may be the accountant that has the information. I requested from the Office of Budget and Management, the report of the report that is presented to them by the committee. It
Mm-hmm.
had no dollars in that report, and I can't see how the Office of Budget and Management can accept those kinds of reports when they manage the state dollars. They're not an
Mm-hmm.
English department. They
Right.
manage the state dollars. So the problem of this, nobody knows where the money is going, how it's been spent, but a few members of the board of directors. So going forward, city and county, before you give our money to this committee, please look at the financial report, because you have to look at trends and disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't read those indicators, you're doomed for a wake up call that you may not want to be a part of. So right now, T, they are in a chaos. They do not know anything. So my suggestion with them is that they need to have a whatever you want to call it, a public relation meeting to share with the community, because the community think that they are the one that's doing or not doing as it relates to the committee. So I
Okay.
thank the person for for communicating with you, but please express to that person that the committee knows nothing that the board of directors is doing, because the board of directors is not attending their committee meeting, or they sharing the information with them. So city
Okay.
council, as you move forward with this agreement, please make sure that before you give taxpayer money to the organization, look at the financial report, which is public record. Uh, uh, Even there was an auditor request by some, is to ask the state auditor to look at the Martin Luther King Committee.
Mm-hmm.
That did not fall through, but over in Hope Mills, somebody sent in a letter out the cloud, and the auditor looked at Hope Mills. This
Mm-hmm.
was a personal visit to the auditor office to ask them, and provided information that was sufficient enough. But remind you
Mm-hmm.
now, in Hope Mill, somebody sent a letter out the cloud, and it caused them to look at Hope Mill City Council. So
Right.
again, thank that person for communicating with you.
Right. I also know you mentioned that Charles Evans is having an event coming up. I do know that Sheila Cuffey has something coming up tomorrow. It's a virtual event. I think you can find out more about it on Facebook. If anybody else has any events coming up, feel free to let us know. We don't mind letting people know about your event. You know, it's not, we're not, I don't know about you, Mr. Floyd, but I'm not biased. I don't have a dog in this fight. So if anybody else
Well,
has something coming up, please feel free to let us know. I don't mind sharing during our announcements.
okay, but may I differ with you, please?
Absolutely.
If you don't stand up for yourself, I have a problem in communicating with
Well, yeah, but I don't know that anybody, I can't think of anybody right now that falls under that umbrella for me. I do agree with you. I'm gonna say it a little differently. If you ain't never stood up for me, don't ask me to stand up for you.
you.
Not
Well,
in
that's
this
sort
kind
of
of
where I
fight.
am.
Not in this kind of fight. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
but I will say this. I don't mind sharing the information because
yeah,
that's what we exist for, and I want people to be able to make an educated decision when it comes to who they want to support in these races. I
yeah.
am still eager to find out how all of this is going to shape up. Mr. Floyd, do judges ever have do they ever have forums?
No, 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 no.
So
I
how are
think
people
that
supposed to learn more about the judges that are on the ballot?
keep their hand crossed and read and read and read and look at his or her court decision and how they
Do judges
move.
ever have to answer questions in any of the news outlets? Like, do they have to do the candidate question responses?
I don't know, teacher. I haven't seen one yet. I'm not saying they haven't, but I
Hmm.
haven't seen one yet because usually wise attorney don't challenge judges.
Yeah, but if a judge is on the ballot, I think we should be able to get information about what they
Sure.
stand for, and be able to understand a little bit better what their objectives are. So I don't know if that happens. If it does, somebody let me know. I've never seen it either, but if it does, somebody
Yeah.
let me know. Maybe I just missed it. Mr. Floyd, what else do you
Again,
have for us by way of
wise.
announcements?
No, that is it. Now remind you now. I said march, and you all say parade. It has turned into a Martin Luther King march. I mean, a parade, a march, and there's
What's the
uh,
difference, Mr. Floyd? Tell us the difference.
parade. You have floats.
Okay. But a march,
Okay,
you just have everybody walking.
you just have everybody just walking.
Got it.
Okay,
I got
that's
it.
how that's how the program itself has decreased. And I don't believe the last 2 years financial report from the parade has been presented to the committee
Isn't this the
nor to the
second year
board of
though that it's going
directors.
to be postponed? This is the second year, right?
Yes,
Because last year they didn't
yes,
have it. So let me
yes,
say
and
this: the older I get, go ahead.
they postponed the banquet twice, which Councilperson Malik Davis was going to participate. And some said because of low ticket sales. So if you are a committee and you can't muscle 100 people to attend your program activities, read the indicators, teacher.
Yeah.
Read
Um,
indicators.
and I'll say this: the older I get, the more I look into the people that we champion as heroes in our community, and I have lots of questions. I have more unanswered questions. Um, the older I get, and no, truly, Mr. Floyd and Martin Luther King Jr. is one of those people that now I'm looking at quite differently in my latter years of life. And I'll tell you, I think that there's a guy on social media. His name is Chad Jackson, and he is answering some of the questions that I've had. And I think that if people really want to, I think we've done a disservice in our community of just accepting narratives. And Mr. Floyd, I think that we're beginning to see that be challenged on a wide scale, because all black folk are not just going to go along with information just to get along. And I think that, the more we dig and the more we look, the more we find that everybody that was sold to us as a hero may not be a hero, and everything that was put in our community and positioned as being good for us may really not have been. Now, Mr. Floyd, do you have any other announcements before we roll into
No,
our?
no, but I'm just simply saying I learned in my 3 decades. I thought that my party wanted experience in their people that they elected. Now I see that my party wants you to support individuals that they like. So that's my way of. I'm not looking at experience in a candidate anymore. And so
Mhm.
those who are incumbent, I'm not looking at them anymore because it
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything. I'm looking at one, like you said, I can read that the bio, what they have done, and start looking at strong support for those persons because we don't like the experience. We vote those persons out. So I don't have any more.
Okay, well let's get to it. So there's some conversation about data centers coming to our area, and it's very controversial, very controversial, Mr. Floyd, because there's a narrative that data centers will actually create jobs, and then there's a narrative that data centers are going to harm our community and not really create the jobs that we're expecting. And according to an opinion piece in the Fayetteville Observer, there's some alarms being raised about this proposed gas powered net zero data center planned for Fayetteville by Energy Storage Solutions. The developer touts job creation and tax revenue, but critics argue that the project relies entirely on natural gas turbines, potentially increasing air pollution, water strain, and residents' utility bills, which are already climbing. The piece points to similar ESS proposals in other North Carolina towns. I believe you mentioned one of them was Tarboro, some of which have been blocked by local officials and followed by litigation as cautionary examples. Mr. Floyd, the author of this opinion piece frames the project as a marketing rebrand rather than a genuinely green facility. Now, the reason that this matters procedurally is because it raises core governance questions that we face before here in the city of Fayetteville, like authority and approvals, utility infrastructure, um, our the upgrades that often trigger cost recovery through rate increases through Fayetteville PwC, transparency standards, and precedent risks. What are your thoughts on this data center, Mr. Floyd?
Chief, do you do you travel North Carolina any? Um,
I
I
do,
know you're in
yes.
Laird. Okay, you know where Rocky Mount is.
I do. I used to
Okay,
drive to
Rocky.
Rocky Mount twice a month.
Okay, well, Rocky Mount is divided into two counties: the
Hmm.
Nash County side and the Edgecombe County side. The Edgecombe County side is like Fayetteville. We need all the economic development that we can get.
Right.
Okay, when Tarboro, North Carolina, rejected this proposal, even Ray Charles started looking. Okay, Tarboro need these kinds of economic development. But one thing that this county pushed forward to teach is two things. The county, I'm talking, including the city, they look at jobs and they look at housing. Now, this is a data center, and you're talking about creating 500 jobs in a data center.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, these data centers, as you well know, is going to put a strain on any community. Some people consider them as like they said about the hog farm, the odor that came from the hog farms. So, but the city and the county, I feel that will buy into sale, this sale
Hmm.
pitch, which is indicated that it will only create less than 100 jobs.
And they may
So
not necessarily be the kind of jobs that benefit
no,
our community. Because
no.
I think that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind. And we're going to talk about a story in just a little bit when it comes to childcare. But I'll tell you this, Mr. Floyd, I think and I talked about this during my time running for office, I think we need to be very holistic about how we look at what companies we bring into our community because we need companies that are going to be supportive of our working families, particularly those who are single parent households, and how those working families are supported in general in terms of higher wages, in terms of working hours that permit them to still parent their children, so they're not always just at work trying to make a living, and also that have some elements of assisting in health insurance and affordability of childcare. Because without that support, you don't have a workforce. You don't have a workforce because the vast majority of the people in this community fall under an umbrella where they require that type of support in order to work. And if we're not going to be conscious of that, it doesn't matter what we do, it's not going to lift us out of tier one, and it's not going to improve the economic plight of the members of this community who need that improvement the most. Would you agree, Mr. Floyd?
I agree. I agree with you. And when you look at moving out of tier one with economic development, it's going to be a task right now, Chief, because we do not have the infrastructure in place to drive this community into tier two.
See, and Mr.
Okay,
Floyd,
we
and
don't
I
have it.
challenge that. I challenge that because we have two universities, we have a community college, and each of them are excelling in some aspect. I think we don't do a good job with the other elements of being able to maintain the workforce. And I go back to what I said when I'm talking about really bringing in companies that are able to cater to what we already have established and who will support the people that are here and help them to matriculate to trickle into these jobs. I think we do have a qualified workforce. We have two universities and we
I agree
have a
with you on
community
that.
college. Yeah, and I feel
I
like
agree with you on
I
that.
think every time I hear somebody say we need a qualified workforce, I ask the question, well, where do you think that Methodist University is failing? Where do you think that Fayetteville State is failing? Where do you think that Fayetteville Tech is failing at developing a qualified workforce? And often you get
Well,
crickets because those institutions are doing the work of turning out a workforce. They're just turning out a workforce into a community that does not have work for them.
well, and that's true. When we look at Fayetteville State, we look at Cyber. When we look at Methodist College, as an example, you know, we look at what they're doing now is developing a healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we look at our community college, they are capable of training that workforce. You see, but the whole ideology is that, like you said, we are not looking for those kinds of industry to relocate
And we're
here.
not bringing
Now,
in the right level of pay, because when people
now,
come out of this training, if they can drive 45 minutes away from here and get twice the level of pay, they're going to do that. And eventually they're going to move and take their tax dollars right on along with them, because the pay equals what they're looking to make. We are paying people $40,000 here when they can go somewhere else and make 65, 70,000 for the same job. That's
well,
not that's not
I think
logical.
now one thing, and I talked with you about this very briefly. That was something that I saw, and you told me that this is normal for most sheriff officers doing this, as it relates to recruitment. But when you look at a young person that just finished law enforcement school or academy, that can go up to Nash County, Edgecombe County, and get $63,000 a year versus 40 some thousand dollars a year. He or she has no ties per se. So it's easy for that particular person to pack up and go. When you look at a highway patrolman starting pay, it's now about 70, close to 80, 78 to $85,000 a year. So we train them, and then they move over to the highway patrolman, where their
And why
salary
wouldn't
just about double.
and why wouldn't they? And why wouldn't they? Absolutely. Mr. Floyd, one of the other things that we've seen recently, and as a note of congratulations, we've seen recently an appointment at Animal Control. Diane Pfeiffer was appointed to the Director of Animal Services. And again, this speaks to community. So I'm bringing this up very briefly because I want to speak to the nature of our community. Um, she's filling a vacancy that has existed since August following the resignation of former Director Elaine Smith. Pfeiffer is a current county employee with experience in strategic planning, innovation, and public sector operations. She's going to oversee shelter operations, field services, regulatory compliance, and community engagement. Mr. Floyd, do you think that we're going to see, because see, there's an issue. We have an issue with stray animals in our community. I hear so regularly from people in neighborhoods about these dogs wandering around, and when they call, there's nobody to respond. I hear people talking about the high volume of cats now that are lounging on their vehicles and tearing up their gardens and all of the things, and there's no resolution in sight, because there's so many laws that protect these animals and not enough laws that are protecting your property, and we don't have answers coming out of the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners or out of Animal Services. Do you think that Diane Pfeiffer, being somebody who's already ingrained in this system, is going to be able to reform this system? And do you think, Mr. Floyd, that some of those concerns that were raised publicly at the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners meeting by these advisory board members and former staff are going to be addressed in regards to animal services?
Let me. You mentioned the background information on that person,
Hmm.
but did it say anything with experience as it relates to uh, being in animal control?
Well, if you recall,
Did she have a background? Did she have a
let, let
background?
so let me say this. There does appear to be Pfeiffer does appear to have prior ownership and management role in a livestock and dog breeding business,
Okay.
based upon listed filings with the North Carolina Secretary of State. So I don't know if that necessarily speaks to the type of experience you're talking about, or I mean, because a lot of people, I don't know, Mr. Floyd, you tell me.
I just said.
She has it. She
And like you mentioned, she has the administrative skill,
That's what
But
I was getting
our
ready to say. She's
board,
got
yeah,
administrative
pretty
experience.
skilled. Yeah, but our board is a very conservative, slow to act and slow to respond to changes. So let me respond that way and see what she would do in the next 6 months is to address some of these concerns as it relates to county ordinance, policy, staff, funding, and those type of things.
Well, and that's, you just said the magic word when you said funding, because my concern is we bring people in, and it all goes back to the where we place our value. We bring people in, and we don't necessarily give them the funding that they need in order to address the issues, and then we disempower. And I don't even know if that's a word, but today it is. We disempower the people in the communities to be able to do anything about the issues, because um, when there is, if when I go outside my home, I have a small grandchild, and when I go outside my home and I see a large dog roaming, that is a concern for me for the safety of my small grandchild. And these are aggressive dog breeds that we're seeing roaming. These are not, little poodles or chihuahuas that we're seeing running around the neighborhood. When you see something like that, you hesitate to act or respond, because again, there are so many laws that protect the animals, and not many that necessarily are voiced or expressed to protect us. And when we don't have an agency that can come in, because if you call the police, there's nothing they can do. They're going to tell you to call animal control. The police are not going to respond to a large dog breed unless there's a crime that happens in association with that large dog breed. So I guess I'm bringing this up because, Mr. Floyd, it is another example of, to me, a lot to do about nothing. So I
Well,
congratulate her on her appointment, but I look to see, what are you going to do, ma'am? What are you going to do? Because
well,
we are at our wits' end here in Cumberland County where these stray animals are concerned. And we need for you to do something. When we call, we need for your agency to respond. And we need you to respond over the weekend. We need you to respond Monday through Friday. We need you to respond after business hours. We need a response because we feel endangered. I had a dog come in my backyard and kill 6 of my chickens. Remember that?
yeah.
A large dog breed. Why are these animals permitted to roam and terrorize our communities? We need help. So I congratulate you on your appointment, ma'am, and I hope that you will bring the help that we are looking for. Mr. Floyd, anything you want to add to that before we move on to
Well,
what else is
well,
happening?
it just like the city. If I can, it come right back to you, not
Mm-hmm.
movable. Like the city talking about, their number one priority is affordable housing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
affordable housing comes with maintaining and also code enforcement. Okay, you can have a lot of affordable houses if you have stronger code enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, meaning that when you drive by, I, I drove by a house the other day, Keith. Now they're already less than 35 feet off the street. Okay, and they had 7 cars all around the house.
Mm-hmm.
The yard now that was green is solid dirt, but it
I want to
lowered the
ask you a
property
question.
value
Let me ask
around
you
it.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question, and I'm gonna probably catch a little heat for this, but I really have this question. When animals are taken to animal control, or they're taken to the shelter, surrendered to a shelter, they're maintained at the shelter until either an expiration time passes or until somebody comes and adopts them. Right? There are some no-kill shelters, but those are few and far between. So when they go to the shelter and the expiration period passes, they're usually put down. They're not re-released back into society. They're usually put down,
Now some cats are. Now some cats
re-released
are really. They are brought back into the community after they spayed
after
them,
they've
whatever the
been spayed or
terminology is.
neutered. After they've been
Yeah,
spayed or
yeah,
neutered.
yeah. They turn them back.
Um,
They bring them back into the community now. Bring them back.
yeah. So my question is, if when they go to a shelter, if they're put down, why are we required to deal with this in the community? Why are we required to deal with abandoned animals or just stray animals that are terrorizing our communities? Why do we have to deal with that? But I will leave that there because I don't have the answer, and I'm sure you don't either, because that's a policy issue. Mr. Floyd, let's talk about something that's not as contentious.
Okay.
Because people get very sensitive about these animals.
Well,
Mr. Floyd,
that's a,
Go ahead.
But no, it's
Okay.
also depending who cried the loudest. They cried the loudest. Okay.
But I'm gonna start crying too because, like I said, my property has been destroyed by roaming wild animals. And they might have a home, but when they're in my backyard, that's a roaming wild animal. My grandson is threatened and endangered. My daughter came home one day to her house, and when she came home to her house, a large dog breed. Now she's a young mother with a small child, a wild, and she don't have a weapon to defend herself from an animal like that. A wild dog came running aggressively at her. She had to lock her and herself in her vehicle. The same dog she saw run up on a mailman in the neighborhood the day prior, and the mailman literally had to brandish a weapon in order to back the dog off of him, and was letting the people know, get your dog or I'm going to shoot your dog. This same dog who was aggressively growling at the mailman ran up on my baby and her baby, and they had to lock themselves in their car. This is out of control. Ms.
Right.
Pfeiffer, help us.
Well, Tish, I tell you, Tish, staffing in some areas is a concern, and I believe that they are understaffed as it relates to the number and the
Absolutely.
increase of the number of animals that we have. Because in my community, just like you mentioned, there's at least four cats that have been around there 20 plus years. Okay, 20 plus years,
And you know
and they
somebody is
spay.
feeding them.
Yeah, they spay them and they bring them right back. Okay, but they do provide a service that they keep the rats from. They do hunt the rats
My
at night.
father said his car is all scratched up because the cats want to jump up on there and sleep on it. Why is
Mhm.
the protection of our property not as important as keeping these? Listen, get your animals. Get your animals. Okay, Mr. Floyd. Speaking of low employment rates or low, staffing rates, missing students, missing millions. We are seeing enrollment decline in the public school system here in Cumberland County. There has been approximately a two, not approximately, there has been a 2.57% enrollment decline, according to CityView's reporting this week, bringing total enrollment to 47,177. District leaders warned that the drop could cost the system upwards of almost $10 million in future state funding next year and lead to fewer state funded teaching positions. Now, we already have a teacher shortage. We all know that. Teachers are exiting the classroom because they're finding other job opportunities that pay, as we just discussed, that pay better and are less stressful. Um, at the district's Budget and Finance Committee meeting, Associate Superintendent Jay Tolan explained that North Carolina now funds districts in a different way. So now the districts are based on prior year average daily membership versus projected enrollment, which means that this year's decline will likely directly reduce next year's state allotments. Each school gets about $8,000 per student. And so this loss again translates to an estimated about $10 million in funding exposure. Mr. Floyd, what do you what you
Well,
attribute this to, sir?
I mean,
I have my
when you
thoughts.
look at it, Tish, when you look at it, Tish, your school funding for next year is
Mhm.
based on the first 20 days of the school year. The first 20 days of the school year determine the next year funding. So when you look at the system itself, when you look at the number of D schools and the number of F schools of the 84 schools that we have, some parents are now saying, let me homeschool, private school, or charter school my child so he or she can get the best quality and what the Leandro indicated, a sound basic education. That is what happening now, because I look at I think I'm gonna say the Capital Academy. I guess that's the
Capital at
name
the
of it. Down,
Encore. Hmm.
yeah, you know. when I looked at the percentage of those students there. There was 38% minority of the student population that's there. And
Hmm.
we talk about charter school, and we want all of our money to go towards public school. And if you notice now, the county
Who is
gave
we?
the,
Who is we?
well, I'm just saying we teach that. I mean, I support the best quality education that parent want to provide for his or her student
And
child,
I
whether it's
support a
private
parent as
school.
a taxpayer being able to take their tax dollars wherever
Yeah,
they want to take them to
yeah,
educate their child. Yes, sir.
yeah. I mean, but my party was angry with me because I support charter school. Now, remind you now, the Democrats in the early 90s are the one that started charter schools. They had 100 charter schools, not the Republican, not based on the income level. They started the charter school. So if they started this, if they start the cry for charter school in the early 90s. So what did that tell me as a minority person? That
That is
meant
good
that you
for
didn't
you.
want, yeah, that you didn't want my child to be with your child. So what you did, you said charter school has the same as public school, but they had the word flex. Okay. So when the Republican came in, they just took that big phone that we used to have and put it into a small cell phone. That's what they did. Now we have a problem with charter schools. Okay. So the hue and cry is that a parent should have the right to choose the best quality education for his child. So one of the reasons for that day is a decline in growth. Now, could it be childbirth? I don't know. Or could it be that the parent is saying, "I need some other opportunity for my child."
So absolutely. And there are several ways we can look at this. And unless we pull the data, we won't know specifically. But this certainly could be attributed to lower birth rates. This could be attributed to, and again, we won't know unless we pull the data. This could be attributed to people pulling their students out of the public schools and putting them in these other options that are available. This could also be attributed to population shift. So, as we were talking earlier about people taking their experience and going somewhere where they're going to get more paid more money, they may be taking their families with them, and we may be losing population. You mentioned something, and you've mentioned it several times on this podcast that I want to make sure people remember as we talk about the possibility of population shift. When people leave this community and our population declines, what happens in terms of our representation?
We lose. We lose.
What do we
If you
lose?
look at we lose representation. If you look at Cumberland County, some people say 325,000, some people say 348,000. But a congressional district consists of just about 900 plus thousand citizens. Our community is large enough, the county is to have a third of the district. Okay.
Hmm.
But what they do to our community, they split our community up into two congressional districts. So if you look at that, and when we redraw the district in 2030, probably will be in 2032, I perceive that we are going to lose a representative. And what I mean by that, Chief, that we will have 3.5 representatives instead of the
Hmm.
four. We used to have five. So what that's going to boil down to is that we'll probably have two Democrats and two Republicans once those districts are redrawn. The reason for that, Chief, is that Lumby got their tribal recognition. It's now red.
Hmm.
Hope County, Moore County, and Harnett County. One
Hmm.
of our House district, is going to switch that way. And we will lose representation because we don't have the growth. Now, when we look at House districts, we're talking about anywhere between 85 and 95,000. It's depending on the growth there. And Senate district is anywhere between 120 and 130. So
Okay.
we are going to lose representation, and we don't have good representation now. So you can imagine what would happen in
Why are you
3.
talking about why are you talking about these people that have been elected by our good citizens of Cumberland County?
Well, I mean, if you look at them, I attended the swearing-in ceremony of the new council people
Hmm.
in December, and I heard the mayor so boldly stated this: the brother that introduced, I mean, that swore him in, that he got a bill passed. So with me, Teach, I'm curious about this because this is a Republican-controlled General Assembly. I
Right.
said, wow, he got something done for my community and bought back. And once I read the bill, it was a funeral home bill.
Are you surprised? Anyhow, moving right along. So basically, the community
So he
impact.
didn't do anything, what
Um,
I'm saying.
no, I know, Mr. Floyd. He did something for himself. That's what he did.
He did a funeral home
It's
bill.
not that he
I
didn't
mean,
do anything. He did something for himself because we all know
but
what
I was
industry that
surprised
those
though.
two brothers are
Yeah.
in.
But I was
Um,
surprised. I was. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I was surprised because when he said it in the midst of his receiving his oath of office. So I said to
Yeah,
myself, I mean, I
sometimes
was
we ought to be
proud.
quiet because when you make people look a little deeper, we realize how self-serving you truly are. But Mr. Floyd, let me just say this as we wrap up talking about the schools. People can expect that enrollment loss can lead to larger class sizes because as you have to reduce teachers, you've got to increase class size to accommodate your students, fewer course offerings, and reduce student support services. Teachers and staff face insecurity as positions become contingent on enrollment trends rather than long term community needs. And the district does acknowledge that while this is a part of a statewide trend, local factors such as, like you said, school performance, safety perceptions, family mobility, or alternatives like homeschooling and school of choice vouchers will shape whether students return. So, Mr. Floyd, I think we just keep our eyes attuned to what's going on. And I believe that what the schools need to understand is this is an indictment on their competitiveness in the culture of of educating students and keeping them safe, or at least the perception that parents have on their ability to educate their student and keep them safe.
Let me say this to you also.
Yes, sir.
The Board of Education is supposed to look at the consultant report.
Hmm.
This month, sometime around the end of the month. So, what effect will this have on the closing of I think a 13 school,
I think it
or the
goes to support
building
it.
or the building of new schools?
Hmm.
That do we need to do? Do we need to do that? I think the last school that we were blessed with was about 20 years ago. But you have to
Absolutely.
look at
That's
it.
what we.
Yeah, but you have to look
Hmm.
at it. It is the county responsibility to build schools. It is
Hmm.
the county responsibility, not the state. The state will support you, if they can, and if you got good legislators who can sort of channel some money that way. But one of the gentlemen that Michael Ray up in up near Ronald Rabbit, he
Hmm.
bought about 130. He bought over 100 somewhat $1 million to his community for education. And quite naturally,
Hmm.
the Democrat Party voted them out.
Yeah.
now,
Um,
now you talk about Rocky Mount. That's a little further up by Rocky Mount. It's poor than Rocky Mount,
right.
you see. But anyway, that's politics.
I've got two honorable mentions, and then I want to get to something that we often talk about on our podcast. So the first honorable, because it's here we have it again, Mr. Floyd, and it's going to be after these two honorable mentions. But here we have it again, where we see a seated governor putting his foot on the scale in the primary. But before we get to that, we do see our city council is considering revisions to the city's picketing ordinance after complaints from downtown business owners about recurring demonstrations on Hay Street, particularly as some public complaints and a viral social media post about the Black Hebrew Israelites and their street preaching is concerned and has raised brought some attention to this topic. Now, Mr. Floyd, while I am not at all a proponent of the Black Hebrew Israelites, I believe that they are a false sect. I believe that they are teaching heretical doctrine. I don't believe that they're Christian. While I don't believe any of those things, I also find that when we start talking about creating ordinances that penalize people from being able to exercise their right to free speech, I think that's a tricky slope. And I want to point to something that is happening overseas right now so that people can understand just how slippery this slope is. And I want to tie it back to some things that are going on right here in the United States of America. There was recently a lawsuit leveraged by the French president's spouse, um, Macron's spouse, against people who have been posting about their orientation, not orientation, their origination. So it has been reported that the French president's spouse was born a man. It is documented that the French president's spouse started a relationship with him while he was a minor, and they were, I think, about 40 years old. So this is all documented. Now, the issue has become that the French president's spouse is saying, I feel bullied by people having this conversation on social media. And so, what has happened is the French government or the French courts have found 11 people guilty of cyberbullying because they are talking about these things that we just discussed. And they have been sentenced. Some of their sentences have been deferred, but they have been sentenced to jail time. Now, I bring that back because there's a podcaster here in the United States, Candace Owen, who is currently being sued by the French government, by the French president and his wife, because of this commentary. What we're seeing with our city council is an opening of the door to something like this happening here, where you don't have to necessarily be in violation of a law. You just have to be making people uncomfortable and saying or doing something that they don't like. So you don't have to really be causing them harm or inflicting damage upon them in order to it's just such a tricky place to be, because yeah, nobody wants to be called a whore, which is what the article said, that they're calling women whores, and saying some other damning things. Nobody wants to hear that. But at what point are we doing too much when we start trying to shut down this speech? At what
Well,
point do
honestly,
your rights end and mine begin?
well, that is what I was getting ready to say. So do you have rights? So do I have rights. Okay.
Hmm.
And what I'm asking you to do is to respect my rights. You know,
But you cannot
what you're saying.
legislate respect. We have tried that for
No,
centuries. You cannot
no,
legislate respect.
I understand that. But the process of it is if you can sit down and eat, you know, then I should be able to stand up and speak.
Exactly, because how far does it go? So if I say this is the question, and I'm not defending these foul and like these vile and foul things that are being said. I am defending the right for them to be said. Here's the question that I have. My question is, at what point does it end? Because Mr. Floyd, if we say, I don't, you have to be this far away from this eatery in order to do this activity. Okay, now if I'm standing silently and just staring at you, and you decide that you feel threatened by me just looking at you, does this now become something that you go back to your legislators and say, I don't like the way they looked at me, so now I need you to say they can't look at me while I'm eating because it makes me
Huh?
uncomfortable and it makes me feel threatened? How far does this go?
Well, let me ask you a question then. If you're talking about outside communication as an example,
Hmm.
okay. Now I see a lot of restaurants have expanded their seating capacity to the sidewalk. Okay, have changed their seating capacity.
Hmm.
But now I also paid for the street where
Hmm.
you now have expanded your restaurant
And that
seating
happened during
capacity.
COVID because they were trying to keep their restaurants open. And so they created these
Okay,
patios. order to be able to do that,
Okay,
right?
but okay, but it's still the public sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we pay for it through our tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, but you have
And these Hebrew
expanded,
Israelites are taxpayers also, right?
yeah,
Right?
but you have expanded your restaurant, not inside restaurant. You have expanded it to outside, where that I have should have access. So, like in the old days, they were saying that if you're going to protest, you should be 3 feet apart and whatever, whatever. So, what about you sitting in my space?
Right, right. And
Okay,
here's the thing, and I don't want anybody, please, y'all, don't get me wrong. I think that these people are an abomination in what they're saying. I think that and I'm specifically talking about the Black Hebrew Israelites. I don't think that they're bad people, but I think they have bad, they got bad mouths. I
well,
don't know them as people, but I've heard some of the things that they've said. And even and when I approach, because I am a woman of this complexion, when I approach, they say something different to me than they say to other people. But even what they say to me is vile because it reduces what my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ did to nothing, because it makes it as if he only did it for people that look like me. And that's just a lie. And I don't uphold lies. But here's the issue, Mr. Floyd. When did you saying something that I don't like become an issue? Because when I grew up, and we've talked about this before, my mama raised me on sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. Now, y'all might be too young to know about that who are listening to this, but essentially what she was teaching me was you don't allow what people say to affect, first of all, how you see yourself. And secondly, how you respond to them. There's a
well,
level of self control that has to be exhibited. Now, here's the issue, the real issue is not that people are offended by what's being said by the Hebrew Israelites. Mayor Colvin touched on it without really coming out and saying it. The real issue is that it is affecting, or it is being perceived to affect, the margins of profit for the businesses that are downtown,
well,
because they
well,
believe that people are avoiding their establishments in order to avoid these people. So this has now
well.
become an economic issue, and help me understand where this ends.
It ends by the council then use it, say, inside the established brick and mortar facility. Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
means inside the restaurant area.
Yeah, because I can
But when
keep
you
you out of my
outside,
restaurant. I have the right to
yeah,
trespass you from the inside of my restaurant.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
But on the outside, it is a public street.
So if you don't want to hear it, carry your butt inside. Eat
Now, it's a
inside.
public, it's a public street. So I have a right. I have a right to walk down a public street. Okay? I have
Yeah,
that
this
right.
is very
But then,
this is
but anyway, we're waiting to see what
yeah,
what they come up with. I think one person that's going to keep them. What's it, Deshaun?
Sean
That's going.
McMillan. He'll keep them.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
we've got attorneys coming back and saying it's constitutional. So we'll see what happens. Mr.
Okay.
Floyd, today is an interesting day because we can announce that North Carolina is now more red on paper than blue. There are more registered Republicans than Democrats, which is a problem for our governor, because now us unaffiliates, we still outnumber all y'all. There's about 38% of us that are unaffiliated. There's a small margin, tinge more. There's about 30.24 who are Republican and 30.21% who are Democrat. So it's just a hair of a margin, but we outnumber all of y'all greatly. Now, here's the issue. The issue is that as we turn to the ballots, we see our Republic, he is not a Republican, Father, forgive me, and please, Josh Stein, forgive me too. But our Democrat governor is doing what his predecessor did, because he does not like that some of the Democrats who work in this administration have voted against party lines. So what we see is Josh Stein has endorsed Rodney Sadler in a Democratic primary challenge against seven-term incumbent Carla Cunningham, who represents Northern Mecklenburg County. This endorsement is notable not because it pits a sitting governor against a sitting legislator, not just because it pits a sitting governor against a sitting legislator from his own party, but because it's rooted in legislative behavior. Cunningham again lost favor with some Democrats after voting with Republicans to override several of Josh Stein's vetoes last year. Stein framed his support for Sadler as part of a broader effort to block Republican backed legislation in a narrowly divided General Assembly. Mr. Floyd, this matters because primary endorsements like this signal an effort to enforce caucus alignment through elections rather than internal pressure. Now, Cunningham did respond by invoking separation of powers, implicitly challenging the appropriateness of executive involvement in legislative primaries. You have been the recipient of this behavior. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me say this, Chief. We lost. We have started losing members about 10 years ago. The party have, and most younger individuals do not register, as a party affiliate. Now, but what the governor has embarked on is a fighting cat. Cunningham is not going to let the governor bully him. That's one
Maybe
thing
in
about
seven
Cunningham.
terms. I mean, when you've
Well,
been elected 7 times, you've got support.
well, see, and what you don't realize, whether she win or lose, if she loses, the governor have to work with her until December the 31st of 26. And I don't believe that Cunningham is going to be one of her strongest supporters doing that, doing year 26. Now, if you go and follow the governor recommendation, as this great community have done twice, okay, have done twice, what the next person that comes in line behind Cunningham is not going to do anything for your district. He is going to pay allegiance to the governor, and you are not going to get anything for your district. The same thing as they did with Val Applewhite and with Michael Coleman, and very little with Charles Smith. What the governor has done, and if they continue to do this, Chief, we as Democrats are going to lose a lot of voters. Voters say that I won't vote for the other side. I'll just leave that ballot blank. And that's going to hurt Cooper.
Do
But when
you
you
know
look
how
at,
many times over the last 4 years I have gone into the voter booth and just voted for the people that I just constitutionally believed in and left everybody else up to y'all to
Mhm.
decide?
Well, see,
Because truly what you just said, I'm not going to, if there's no, I don't believe in the lesser of two evils. I believe either I'm rocking with you or I'm not.
well, Teach, I give you an example. When I first went to Raleigh, make a long story short, we were allowed to have 5 persons per representative visitor in the legislative side of the
Mm-hmm.
cafeteria. So Representative Pierce and I, 10 people, 5 from every state, 5 and 5. So we was in a committee meeting. So we notified the secretary notified the person in the cafeteria that we would be late, coming. So
Mm-hmm.
Representative Pierce and I agreed to pay 5-5. So when I got there in the cafeteria, I was going to give the lady my debit card to pay for my 5.
Mm-hmm.
She told me that that's not how I rang it up. I want the money the way that I rang it up. I was there 12 years and never went back to the cafeteria.
I did listen because you can't
Okay.
mistreat me.
Yeah. You see, I never went back on that side of the cafeteria to sit down and eat in 12 years. So what
Yeah.
I'm simply saying to you, I'm not going to pay you to discriminate against me. And
And you
that's
have a
what it's
long
for.
memory. And you have a long memory, sir. You don't
Yes.
forget.
Now I don't forget, and I never went back. So what is going to happen, Chief? that if this continue, and Governor Stein said he may not be through. Okay, he may not be through with his
Right.
endorsement, but at the same time, Keith, you split the party. You angry the party member. And I hope that he does not do this again, because that would hurt Cooper's chance of becoming the U.S. Senator.
Well, I'm not a Roy Cooper fan, but I'll let you all, try to convince me. Basically, here's the community impact.
No, I'm not going to try to convince anyone. I'm just saying, but if you
No, I'll let Cooper and his campaign try to convince me that it's an incumbent upon. I'm not, Mr. Floyd, I'm not that girl. And that's what I want everybody that listens to our podcast to understand. We're not here to try and influence who you vote for. I don't care who you vote for. I want you to vote for who you think is going to deliver what you're looking for. What I'm interested in is ensuring that you understand how all of this works. So you vote for who your constitution tells you is best. Let the person who's running for office convince you to vote for them. I just want you to understand how they moving so that you can make a decision on whether the way they move is what's in alignment with how you move.
And in closing, Chief, I know we've already cooked, but the thing about it, the African American Democrat, one of your friends that told you when you first ran, we just want to sit in, to fit in. That's all we want to do. We care nothing about being part of the decision-making process. If that was the case, in 2020 elections, in 2017, I believe, the legislation was passed wherein that the Republican and the Democrat can form a pact to elect statewide candidates. So we go back and look at 2020, the 3 African American females that ran for statewide office was not fortunate to receive money. We go back to 24, we can see that the same person that was in leadership then, the way that it's written, the highest ranking person of that party managed that money.
Yeah.
But they don't have to worry about it. They can count on 90 to 96% of the African American vote and don't even have to campaign one time in that community. So you have a wonderful week, Keith.
Wait. Before you close this out, let me just say this. Constituents in the 106th district where this is taking place are now asked to weigh seniority and local resource delivery against party alignment and political policy consistency. Listen, I'm just gonna say
they're not gonna get anything, Chief. They're not gonna get anything.
Yeah, but that's what I was getting ready to say. I was gonna say, if anybody from the Charlotte area is watching, I just want to tell you, here's what you're up against. If you follow the recommendation of your governor, you're gonna lose resources. You're going to lose resources because when your governor decides that because a representative is able to work across the aisle and does something that they don't like, that they're going to go against them, they remove somebody from this position who has established relationships, a rapport, and a relationship across the aisle to bring stuff back to your community. Sometimes, Mr. Floyd, you've said it, you've got to plug your nose and take the vote because you know in the long run, it is what is best for your constituency. Don't let somebody whose scope is not your area. The 106th district is not the governor's only scope. Just as the governor was not considered necessarily just about Fayetteville when they made the decision to go after you or when they made the decision to go after Kirk Deviere, they were not concerned about how it would affect the city of Fayetteville and receiving resources because we went from a flow of resources to nothing overnight by allowing the governor to cut off the resources where specifically Kirk Deviere was concerned. Now, in this, in Floyd, like I know, because it happened with you, it happened with Kirk. This is not how the constituency should allow decisions to be made.
But Tish, like I said, we are a community that want to fit in, to sit in.
Yeah.
And second, we are a community that want to vote on how I like you. not
Yeah.
how.
And where
So
you're
that's a,
concerned, and I'll say this and then you can wrap us up. Where you're concerned, Mr. Floyd, your governor gave up a seat from the party.
yeah,
Not only did he give up the resources, but he gave up a seat from the party. So if you care about party stuff, that should say something to you. That should say
yeah.
something. But I have nothing else, Mr. Floyd. What do you want to leave our people with today?
Be very careful about when people tell you who they want to serve them. Now remember now, what they want to serve them. You got to be very careful about that process. So, Tish, you have a wonderful weekend, and please, yeah. Can I forward my calls to you for my
No,
credit?
no.
Okay.
Yes, you can, because I know ain't nobody calling you asking you for money. Now, Mr. Floyd, what I would like to say is I'm going to try very hard. Last year, our most used word was attorney. I'm going to try very hard this year not to talk about Attorney Jonathan Charleston. I
Wow.
hope that he would not give us any reason to discuss him. I hope that the Fayetteville City Council will not give us any reason to discuss him. I'm very hopeful that what we've already discussed last year in terms of his censorship and all of the information surrounding that will lend itself to you all being able to do what you need to do to discuss any attorney in any matter the way that you see fit. I'm going to try very hard to give us a different word for this year, but it's not on me, it's on y'all. So let's see if you guys can
Well,
help us establish a new word for the year 2026.
and I can't blame the gentleman if I can convince my friend to keep providing the economic resource for myself. And you again
There's
have a wonderful week.
Absolutely. There's no justice apart from righteousness, no righteousness apart from Jesus. If you're looking for justice, you got to look for Jesus first because it just doesn't exist outside of him. I love you guys. I hope that you have a wonderful week. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, follow, and tell a friend to tell a friend, and we'll catch you on the next episode.